What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode, a live stream post game of the Pittsburgh Steelers preseason loss to the Buffalo Bills. Now, not a game everybody wanted to see, a boring game, offensive struggles. I mean, same old for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll dive into everything we saw, my thoughts on Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson and where that competition is and where it should be headed after yesterday's loss to the Bills. Some massive questions when it comes to Broderick Jones and what's going on there. I got some insight as to why he is struggling and what the deal is and where my thoughts are when it comes to what the Steelers should do with Broderick Jones for the remainder of the preseason. And no, it has nothing to do with changing sides to the left and that solving everything for Broderick Jones and the Steelers. Meanwhile, we'll answer all your questions, dive into some winners and losers, and we'll hang out for about 30 minutes or so, and see where we start off. We'll start off with Broderick Jones. The biggest disappointment for the Pittsburgh Steelers this preseason. Broderick Jones has struggled mightily. He is probably the biggest loser of any of the Pittsburgh Steelers players through two preseason games. And last night was as bad as it could have gotten for the Steelers' future franchise tackle. I'll say this. I'm not going to put everything on Broderick Jones and say that he was the only issue along the offensive line. I'm also not going to say that Broderick Jones changing to the left side fixes everything, or that I'm 100% confident that Broderick Jones is going to be all right, because, well, this is the NFL and guys don't always work out. It's always a question mark. So we'll wait and we will see. But yesterday was a problem. And last week against the Texans was a problem. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they stand right now, they have a decision to make with Broderick Jones onto whether or not they continue to force the issue, try to get it out of him, switch sides, shut him down, trade him. There's a million routes that the Pittsburgh Steelers can go with Broderick Jones. I'll give you this. This is where I stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers right tackle. And no, you're not going to trade Broderick Jones in a fifth-round pick for Brandon Ayuk. Anybody who's giving up on Broderick Jones already, man, dude, you're just pushing the line a little bit too much, because if two preseason games is all it takes for you to give up on a guy that is the 14th pick in the draft, is 21 years old, has all the tangibles when it comes to his physicality, athleticism, and abilities, I think you're giving up on him just a little bit too soon. My thing with Broderick Jones is this. Broderick Jones is dealing with an elbow injury. And I still remember the play that he went down on that elbow injury. It was a goal line drill, 7 shots, they call it. Najee Harris rushes up the middle. Broderick Jones is blocking on the right side. And, well, he comes up and everybody's staring at Najee in the end zone. Broderick's standing 5 yards in the backfield, holding his elbow in visible pain. Things were not okay. He comes back in 3 plays later. Everything's fine. They look okay. The next day, he shows up in a massive elbow brace. Now, he said multiple times to a number of people that elbow brace is becoming an issue, that it limits him a lot in what he's trying to do out there. And to be on the right side and have that elbow brace on your right arm certainly isn't helping things. The way I look at Broderick Jones right now is, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, the best thing that you can do for this guy is not to move him to the left side right now, is not to force the issue and say, you have to beat the struggles that you have right now when it comes to your abilities. My solution for Broderick Jones is to shut Broderick Jones down for the remainder of the preseason, to let him heal, to get that elbow right, to get that brace off of him, and then to move forward. Because if the Steelers are going to go all season relying on half of their offensive line or half of their offensive tackle in Broderick Jones and saying, well, he's 75%, that's good enough, and he continues to struggle the way that he is, for one, it's going to put a ton of pressure on Broderick Jones and the Steelers to fix this or to move on from him. He's going to get a bad rep in Pittsburgh, and this is the NFL, dude. Fans turn like that. All it takes is one game, and already people are saying, trade Broderick Jones, trade Broderick Jones, trade Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones is phenomenal. He's got more upside than maybe anybody on this roster outside of George Pickens. The dude is the next franchise left tackle of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're not trading him. You're not even thinking about trading him. But that's where the Steelers stand, and that's how quick and that's how fickle the NFL is. So you need to shut him down. You can't continue to force the issue and make things worse for him and for the team and for Omar Khan and for the fan base and everybody else. Right now, you're dealing with Troy Fautanu, who's already got an MCL injury and isn't able to start, isn't even able to play. You have Dylan Cook. Start him for the final preseason game. Broderick Jones shouldn't take a snap until week 1, or at least practice of week 1, and try to get him as close to 100% as humanly possible. I don't know if it's an issue. I don't know how long this injury is going to last. I don't know if it's the entire season, and that's why they're just whatever. We have to get through this because Broderick isn't going to lose this elbow brace anytime soon. But the day he loses that elbow brace is the day I stop worrying about him struggling on the field and know it has nothing to do with moving around. And I know everybody's talking about, the Steelers are moving around Broderick Jones way too much. I'll tell you this, he's not moving that much. He's spending a majority of his time at right tackle. I don't think that's the issue. I think that's the easy issue for everybody to latch on to, is to say, you got to put him at the left side. That's why he's struggling. Well, when he goes to the left side and he continues to struggle, what is the excuse there? What's the problem there? I think Broderick Jones is phenomenal. I think Broderick Jones has so much upside, is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, is a building block for this offense moving forward. I think he's injured, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers got to let this guy heal, because right now it's becoming more of an issue. I don't think it has anything to do with him playing the right side or the left side or whatever. I believe it's 100% health, 100% a giant agging brace on his right arm trying to stop the right side. It just doesn't, it's not a formula for success, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have to be more cautious than they are pushy, because it's leading to some very hot takes out there. And that's the problem in today's day and age when it comes to social media and the radio and so many other things, is that people just grab onto one opinion and they run with it, and that's it. Boom. Broderick Jones needs to play on the left side. That's the issue. Broderick Jones sucks. He's never going to get better. Nobody has any of the facts. And the facts are that Broderick Jones has made it very known that he's not playing at 100% and that he's very limited in what he can do with that elbow brace. So let's talk about that. Pat Meyer is the one that needs to go. I highly disagree with this one as well. Highly disagree with this one as well. For those of you who are sitting around saying one bad game is the reason that the Pittsburgh, I get it, it's the preseason. This is overreaction season. This is what you do. You know what I mean? You watch 4 series in one game and everybody freaks out and says, that's the end of it. This team is awful. Pat Meyer's got to go. Pat Myers is a great coach. He has developed some young, good talent. I mean, he made Broderick Jones work on the right side instantly. He's turned Dan Moore into a capable left tackle. I'm not saying a reliable one. I'm not saying one that you're going to start all the time, but capable in the NFL for a guy who probably wasn't capable of being in the NFL. He's made Zach Frazier look like a stud right off the bat. That helps. Mason McCormick's coming along much quicker than anybody expected him to come along. The Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line has some holes, certainly. Currently, they're dealing with a right tackle who's very limited and very hurt, a left tackle that everybody agrees should not be starting. James Daniels has struggled mightily, and to be honest with you, maybe that's James Daniels. Maybe that's just James Daniels right now. Maybe he can't get over that. A rookie center that just got thrown in there, and before that, they were working with a guard who was trying to play center, and I think Nate Herbig's as reliable as they come, but he's not a starting center in the NFL. And then on the other side of it, most of these games have been played by Spencer Anderson as the other guard, who's a second-year, 7th-round pick. I just think that at some point you got to break it down, and harsh reactions are not the way to go when it comes to the Steelers offensive line. That's just where I stand currently when it comes to Broderick and the entire offensive line situation. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think it's more of a pressing, you got to stop it right now and let him heal, and that solves a lot of issues. It's the same thing with Troy Fautanu. You're not pushing the limits on Troy Fautanu, and he could play. You could play through MCL injuries. He played the rest of that preseason game in an MCL strain. He could play continuously. They're not doing it. You want to know why? Because they don't want to push that limit. They don't want Broderick. They should do the same approach with Broderick and not look at it and say, this is because he's on the wrong side of the ball. You're forcing the issue with the fans. It's becoming an issue. It's becoming an issue. Going to sift through some questions here, see what I missed as I dove into Broderick Jones. We'll talk Justin Fields next. It's only me today. Shout out Nick and his day off. Keep talking or keep tossing all your questions in here. I'll sift through them every couple of minutes and see where we're at. When it comes to Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, first opportunity, quarterback, Imano. Who came out on top? Justin Fields. Easy. And you could have any reaction to any of it, but you have to lay out the facts before you address the entire situation as a whole. For starters, Justin Fields played against the second and the third team. Russell Wilson played against the starters. Now, at the same time, Justin Fields had guys like KJ Luther or TJ Luther or whatever his name is trying to catch balls. And I know everybody and their mother saw that deep ball. And on television, it's easy to say, oh, Justin Fields missed the pass. Luther stopped running. And if you saw it in real life, Luther stopped running. If that's George Pickens, that's a touchdown 10 times out of 10 times. If that's Calvin Austin, it's a touchdown 8 times out of 10 times. If that's Van Jefferson, it's probably the same. That's a touchdown. It was a beautiful pass. But at the same time, Justin Fields is a starting quarterback, or at least somebody competing for a starting job, going against guys that are competing for a roster spot. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson's going against the first teamers in a position where his offensive line is hurt, banged up, and not playing well. The running game is almost non-existent, and, well, he still has a wide receiver issue. So you have to break those things down. You have to account for all of that. And because of that, again, you can't look at it and make harsh judgments. But we will leave Buffalo, or the game against Buffalo, and say, yeah, Justin Fields looked like the better quarterback. He looked like the more capable quarterback in a chaotic offense. And I think Arthur Smith's offensive scheme looked a lot better against Houston than it did against Buffalo. And I'm nervous for 2 reasons because of that. For one, you saw more of Arthur Smith's offense with Justin Fields on the field than you did with Russell Wilson on the field. You saw more of those quick passes, draw guys open, make sure that the quarterback is reacting well, just have a flow going in those 2 or 3 series. With Russ out there, maybe it would have happened if the offensive line played better. I mean, 3 sacks in 5 series, that's tough to get anything going. 5 3-and-outs or 5 punts, 1 first down, I believe. It's not ideal, but you didn't see the best offense from Arthur Smith. And I think right now, maybe that's something to concern yourself with. But I also think maybe it's a little bit early and it's the preseason and they're not trying to show their hand. Justin Fields looked like the guy who, under a bad offensive line with limited wide receiver capabilities, could get things done. Now, there were some issues. I mean, he had a touchdown easy on a read option on 4th and 2 that he knew before he snapped the football he was going to keep. If he did not keep, if he read that play the way it's supposed to be read, if you didn't pre-decide what is going to happen on that play, that's a touchdown. I believe it was Aaron Shumplin. Maybe it was Dejan Edwards, whoever it was at running back. They score and they get in the end zone. Instead, Justin Fields holds on to the football. He gets tackled for a loss, turnover on downs, near the goal line. That's not a play that can happen. And that happened more than once. Justin Fields knew where he was going with the football before the play even snapped, and from there it became a mistake. But he also did things like find Dez Fitzpatrick on an absolute dot to the sideline in a play that only Justin Fields is getting out of, because Justin Fields makes those things happen. So the big question moving forward is, what route are you willing to go? Are you looking for the chaos that you could hopefully turn into magic? Or are you looking for a quarterback in Russell Wilson who isn't going to create so much chaos or magic, but he's probably going to play it safer? He's going to make less mistakes. And on 4th and 2, when you need to run a read option, he's going to make the right read on that read option. I think that's a decision the Steelers have to make. I'll say this. This should be an open competition moving into the next preseason game. Why shouldn't it be? Because Justin has clearly earned his spot to at least have a real shot at this starting job. Russell did nothing to say, this is my team, I deserve this, there's no questions asked. I look at Justin and say, if I have a bad offensive line, which right now the Steelers have a bad offensive line, limited running game. I mean, we're going to dive into the wide receiver situation because yesterday it became very apparent once again that, man, there's a reason the Steelers are hunting for Brandon Ayuk, and there should be a reason that they're looking at other options. Jahan Dotson, Cortland Sutton. I mean, you could call for Treylon Burks if you want, but I don't think he's that good. There are other names out there that you can make phone calls for, and that maybe you should, because nobody was open. There were a lot of plays where Russ and Justin are running around because nobody's open and nobody's trying to get open. And maybe that happens more when George plays more than a couple of series, but I have a hard time believing that the Pittsburgh Steelers solve all their things with one superstar wide receiver. When I look at the situation going into week 3 of the preseason, I say Justin Fields starts this one. He gets 2 series, Russ gets 2 series, and then they break up the second half. They go from there. I don't think Kyle Allen should touch the football. John Rice Plumlee should only be doing kick returns, although Cordero Patterson should be doing kick returns. I still don't understand what's going on there. And you try to figure out your quarterback situation in the next 2 weeks because, man, you got to have a battle. Russ did not win that. He had an opportunity to win that. Moving forward, this has got to be both guys, see who the best is. You have 2 weeks to decide. What do I expect Mike Tomlin to do? I don't expect him to do that at all. I expect Mike Tomlin to be Mike Tomlin, hard-headed, stubborn, sticks to his guns, and his guns have said from day one, Russell Wilson's going to be our starter, and he's not going to change that because that's Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin's biggest problem in the NFL, his biggest problem as an NFL coach is the fact that he is as stubborn as it comes with his decision-making, as stubborn as it comes. And it gets him into a lot of trouble in this league. And I believe once again it will, because I don't know if Russ is the guy. And maybe he turns into the guy. Maybe he does. But you have to have a real competition. And right now the Pittsburgh Steelers don't really have one. Let's dive into a couple of questions here. Keep dropping them in. And we'll try to make through. I got to sift through them as we're going here because I appreciate all you guys who are jumping on and making things work. All right. Got a couple highlighted here. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers start Justin Fields? In my opinion, week 1, you start Justin Fields. You don't even think about it. He's your starting quarterback. He is a guy who can make chaos into something good. Not all the time. He's going to get you into trouble a lot. But I want to see what Justin Fields can do, because that's what I've hit the point, or that's where I've hit the point of, is Justin Fields' biggest issue is not mechanics. Justin Fields' biggest issue is not running himself into sacks. He could get away from sacks. Justin Fields' issue is the fact that once that ball is snapped, he's freaking out, man. He is not prepared enough to make decisions in a timely manner. But at the same time, maybe you can develop an offense to make that work. Maybe you can develop an offense where he has quick reads. And that's not what you want in the NFL. It's actually the complete opposite of what you want in the NFL. You want a quarterback who could lead a team in tight situations and make tough decisions, not the opposite, but maybe you can develop an offense to guide him to get there. That's the biggest question mark. The biggest thing with quarterbacks is not mechanics. You could adjust mechanics. You can adjust you could work on speed. I mean, you could work on breaking tackles. You could work on your release. You can't work on, once the ball is snapped, are you capable of making tough decisions and knowing where that football should go in a timely manner? Boom, boom, boom. I don't think Justin Fields can right now. That's his biggest question. I still think he's the starter. In my eyes, he should be the starter, just because this team needs a little bit of magic, man. And Justin Fields brings some magic. And Russell Wilson, he doesn't bring magic. And I think Russ is a good quarterback. I think Russ gets a bad rep. I think if the situation was better, maybe Russ is that guy. And maybe Russ is that guy. We'll find out in the next 2 weeks. But what I've seen so far is Justin make a lot of plays that excite you, and Russ make no plays that excite you. And I would like to see Russ make some more plays before I give him any opportunity to do so. How concerning is Jaylen Warren's injury? I don't know. Concerning right now. I haven't heard any updates. I could check one more time before, just to see if there's anything out there, but I haven't heard or seen anything since the injury happened. I'm concerned about it. Hamstring injuries are tough. Jaylen Warren's a tough dude, man, but even especially at the running back position, a hamstring is as tough as it gets, and they linger. So you just don't know with the soft tissue injuries. I hope he's back. That's a massive blow to the Steelers offense if he's not, but I mean, we'll wait and see moving forward. Sorry. Trying to catch up as we go through here. I don't want to miss everybody's questions. As we highlight a couple. All right, let's keep it going. Who's the nickel without Beanie Bishop? So Beanie Bishop suffered a hamstring injury during practice during the week. I think I might be the only one who knows that, according to sources. I don't know how. I think it's a precaution. I think he's fine. I mean, yesterday he was walking in the locker room. I was walking with Chris Adamski, and Buzz goes, we call him Buzz. His name's Chris Adamski. Goes, Beanie, you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm good. And jumps over a table. And I was like, okay, that's not a guy dealing with a serious hamstring injury. I think he's going to be okay. He needs to get back on the field for the third preseason game, but I expect him to be back on the field for the third preseason game. Would Michael Thomas be an upgrade over Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin III? Would he be worth the drama? I mean, I don't know what drama comes with Michael Thomas. I don't pay attention to Michael Thomas enough. I will say this. He's not an upgrade over Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson. No, I don't even think a little bit. At this point in Michael Thomas's career, yeah, he might be a reliable set of hands, and he has a ton of upside, former superstar in the NFL, but he's as fragile as they come, and I just don't know if he's the solution. I think he adds to your room, certainly, but I don't know if he's the guy as your wide receiver 2. I think you might have to shoot a little bit bigger than Michael Thomas. Can the Pittsburgh Steelers get Mason Rudolph back? Mason, I mean, he led a comeback yesterday. He should get the QB2 job in Tennessee. I'll say this, Mason Rudolph on this football team, I think, would give you the best opportunity of the 3. And that's crazy to say, but that's where we are. I think Mason processes the game very well. I believe that his development has shown from start to finish. He's just a guy that he stands in the pocket. He's a professional quarterback, and he makes good throws. I like Mason. And you could ask wide receivers who have played with Mason. They like Mason too. So it's tough to sit here and say that he wouldn't be the best option, but no, you can't get him back. Is Justin making some headway in the battle with this performance yesterday? I want to say yes. I want to say that the Steelers have opened their eyes and realized that pole position means absolutely nothing in the NFL, and you have to stop with the nonsense and start to adjust your thoughts. And those thoughts should be, Justin deserves a shot. I don't think he should take the lead in this battle, but I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers should make this, for the last 2 weeks, a real position battle and see who comes out on top, because I have a feeling Justin might. Opinion on Calvin Austin III as punt returner? Almost just spilled coffee all over myself. I thought Calvin Austin looked good. He had no coverage. Like, you go back and watch. So for those of you who are new to the program, or who haven't heard me say this before, I go home every night. Last night I got home about midnight. I turn the game on. I rewatch the game as quickly as I can. Just, go back through it as fast as I possibly can. Calvin Austin got zero support from his gunners last night. Nothing. Like, he was making one guy miss, and then there was no lane to get anything done. So I think Calvin Austin is electric and has so much potential as a punt returner, but I don't understand where his help is. And the Steelers haven't finalized their special teams unit yet. This is the part of the process where you try out guys that are lower on the depth chart who are fighting for a position, because if they're going to make the roster, it's going to be because of special teams. So you're going to have your struggles. Calvin Austin, I think, is going to be great. He needs some running lanes, man, because there are none out there for him to grab onto. I'd trade Russell Wilson to the Vikings for a draft pick. I would not trade Russell Wilson. I think anybody who's trying to make a drastic trade for Russell Wilson doesn't understand what happens if week 15 rolls around and Justin Fields gets hurt and the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the best teams in football. Kyle Allen's going to lead you to Super Bowl? No chance. And I'm not saying Russell Wilson's definitely going to, but it's the same reason you wouldn't trade Justin Fields right now if Russ won the job. You want a guy behind you who costs literally nothing to be in place to step in if needed and continue to bring this team to where the Steelers want it to be. The Steelers are hunting for a Super Bowl. You want a quarterback. We've seen quarterbacks go down so many times in tough situations. You don't want Kyle Allen in that situation. You want Russell Wilson. So that's why you would never even consider trading Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Pat Freiermuth needs to be more involved. I heavily agree with this one. That being said, I'm not trying to get him hurt in the preseason, so that's okay. Arthur Smith's offense last night kind of disappointed me because I thought that Pat Freiermuth was more involved in training camp. Last night, Arthur Smith's offense was not good. It was not a well-run offense. I don't know if that was Arthur Smith. I don't know if that was the bad offensive line. I couldn't tell you, but it was a bad day offensively when it came to the schemes and execution and so on and so forth. And Pat should have been more involved. I agree. Do I think that the Steelers give Justin Fields more reps with the starters now? I do. I think that it becomes more even. That's my side of things. Mike Tomlin, as I explained earlier, is as hard-headed and stubborn as they come in the NFL, and I could easily see him saying, Russ is still our guy. That hasn't changed, blah, blah, blah. We're not backing down from a guy the second that he has a bad game. Because, I mean, we've done that before. We've been through this cycle before. That's what Mike Tomlin does. It's his biggest weakness in the NFL. Is he does not realize when he needs to make a change or at least test out a change, and this is a good opportunity to do so. Jahan Dotson. I love Jahan Dotson, man, and I think that he's available or at least could be available in the next coming weeks. And if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm making some phone calls because he's probably going to be cheap. I think he's got a ton of upside. You got to build the confidence. He could play on the outside. He could play on the inside. He's just a dude who has potential, and you want potential. The Steelers don't have potential on their roster right now. They have Calvin Austin, who has a ton of potential, George Pickens, who's a superstar, and Roman Wilson, who has a bunch of potential as a rookie. Besides that, you have a bunch of guys who don't have potential, who have already reached that potential, and where even if they have a good season, aren't long-term satisfactory options for the Steelers. Jahan Dotson might be. He might be. A lot of bagging on Pat Meyer, man. You guys got to go back and realize how good Pat Meyer is as a coach. I understand that it's in the NFL the easiest way to do things is to blame the coach. I mean, it's a rule of thumb that everybody hates their offensive coordinator and everybody hates their position coach of the position that is struggling. But I don't think Pat Meyer is bad at all, man. I don't think Pat Meyer is bad at all. Going to go through and highlight some questions here to make sure that do I think all right, we'll answer a couple more. Injury to Peyton Wilson. The injury to Peyton Wilson is a concussion. He's being evaluated. We should know Monday what the situation is, Tuesday what the situation is. But I don't expect it to be like a lingering thing. A concussion, I mean, it sucks. A concussion is a terrible injury, but at the same time, it's a situation where if this was when he went down, I thought it was a leg injury, and I was very concerned. A lot of people bagging on the offensive line. The offensive line is rough, man. It's never lets you down. All right, let's keep these questions going. I apologize again. It's only me. Should Omar Khan get more urgent when it comes to the Brandon Ayuk trade? Yes, I mean, certainly, but I don't think it's on Omar Khan at this point. I will say this, if Brandon Ayuk doesn't work out, what we've seen so far is that they need to make a trade for somebody. I don't care who it is. It could be Jahan Dotson. It could be CeeDee Lamb. Doesn't matter to me. The way I look at things is you have to add a wide receiver because you have to be able to make plays. And it goes to the whole point. It goes full circle here. If the offensive line is bad and it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, but they have to improvise, you want George Pickens and Brandon Ayuk out there, not guys who succeed because they run good routes. You want the guys who could improvise well and make plays on their own. That's George Pickens. That's Brandon Ayuk. Calvin Austin's in that bucket. Roman Wilson's in that bucket. I don't know if Van Jefferson is. And I would like to see more options because the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line right now has struggled so mightily that you need to have improvisers, and Brandon Ayuk is an improviser for sure. Is anybody worried about George Pickens not running his routes full sprint? I mean, if you haven't been paying attention, that's who George Pickens is. That's the biggest issue with George Pickens, is that he is really not the biggest team player, has never been the biggest team player. And I mean, his attitude is the biggest downfall of him. Hopefully he could continue to work on that. Do you think LaMichael Perine makes the team this season? I don't know. Him and Jonathan Ward look very good. I think the Steelers have options there. Cordell Patterson doesn't really look that good, so we'll see what happens there. But I look at it simply by saying, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I want a third true running back. Jonathan Ward, LaMichael Perine are those options, especially with Jaylen Warren's hamstring injury. I think maybe you keep Cordell Patterson as like that extra option, but I would put those guys as your running back 3 ahead of them, where I stand right now. I appreciate you guys just going ham in the comments here. This is awesome. All right, just making sure that I'm all caught up. A lot of TJ Watt should be playing. What are the odds the Pittsburgh Steelers get Brandon Ayuk? The last thing I heard was the other day, and it was quite simply the 49ers are really confident this is going to happen. They remain confident. But to be honest with you guys, I have heard that the entire time. I have not put out reports while everybody else is bragging about, the Steelers are at the goal line, or the Steelers are convinced that this is going to happen, or they're optimistic that this is going to happen. You see those reports from there's been 5 or 6 of them going out, 5 or 6 different names all over the place, bragging about how they got the reports on this stuff. I'll be very honest with you. Every time I check in on those reports and just say, hey, what are you hearing? What am I hearing? What does my sources say? My sources have said from the jump that the Pittsburgh Steelers want Brandon Ayuk to happen, but they're not as convinced as these reports are claiming that it's going to happen. That being said, I've also heard, outside of some dog Twitter account who could we start admitting was not right. I mean, I like Ricky. He was a blast, but I'm not going off of reports of him anymore. And when you look at the latest offer of $30 million, I don't believe that's true. I believe that they're sitting somewhere around 26.5. That's at least what I've been told. Excuse me. The Steelers are about 28 and change. If they don't budge that, I think Brandon Ayuk pushes the needle and forces a trade to Pittsburgh. So I still am confident that it could happen, but my sources are not as confident as me. John Mechie would be a great ad. I agree, but John Mechie hasn't looked great in the preseason. He had a bad drop against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, came back with a good play this week, but I mean, he hasn't looked like a superstar. That being said, it's the same thing with Jahan Dotson. A lot of potential. You can make something out of that kid, or at least try to, and probably get him for cheap. I'd be about John Mechie. He's on a list of developing guys that if you're just going to take a shot on somebody, I would make a move for him. Are you concerned with Patrick Queen wearing the green dot? He never did it with the Ravens. Our safety Chuck Clark called the defense prior to Roquan signing. No, I'm not concerned at all. Patrick Queen, from what I've been told, is as intelligent as they get when it comes to an inside linebacker, and has been doing a phenomenal job calling plays. There's been no issues there. So my answer to that would be no. I think Patrick Queen's going to do great wearing the green dot. You don't need a solid improviser. If you build a solid offensive line, you win in the trenches. I agree with you. 100% I agree with you. But where are you going to build in the trenches right now? That's the biggest question, is where are you going to build in the trenches? James Daniels has struggled during this preseason, and he should not be struggling. He's a dude that 2 months ago we were talking about could sign a $20+ million deal next year. Now he's struggling. So that's a question. Isaac Seumalo hasn't played much, but when he's out there, he's also struggling. He doesn't look the greatest. He obviously got Broderick Jones, who is very disappointing, but also dealing with a pretty significant injury that's holding him back. And because of that, you have to wonder if Broderick plays well and is healthy, how much of that changes. And you have to take health into this. You have to take health into this. If a wide receiver wasn't running fast because he had a leg injury, you'd be like, you wouldn't be sitting here saying that wide receiver sucks. You'd say, why is that wide receiver out there if he's not running fast, if he's dealing with the leg injury? Offensive lineman, you're dealing with an arm injury that's limiting you, and you're open about it being limited for you. You have to take that into consideration. Could Brandon Ayuk even help with this offense? Yeah, I think so. Certainly. I definitely think so. I mean, you have to fix the offensive line. That's the biggest issue, but having another star wide receiver definitely helps. I mean, George Pickens can make a lot out of nothing. Brandon Ayuk can make a lot out of nothing. And that's not ideal. That's not the way that you want to build a football team. But if the question is, can Brandon Ayuk even help with this offense? Yes, I believe he could. Was Sean Payton right about Russell Wilson? Big fan of all Steelers talk. I appreciate you. I don't know. I mean, I think Sean Payton didn't want anything to do with Russell Wilson. Maybe Russell Wilson doesn't have it in him. We'll see what happens. I'm not putting everything on Russ from last night. I believe that the offensive line hurt a ton and didn't allow him to get into rhythm. We'll see as things develop. I wish I got to see him more this summer in training camp, but obviously the injury does not help that. But I don't know. I don't want to give him to be honest, Sean Payton kind of bugs me. So I don't want to give him his flowers. Maybe that's just the fact that my dad's a Broncos fan. You know what I mean? You always kind of like, yeah, whatever, man. They're not that good. But I don't know. I don't want to give him his flowers. Noah is the meeting darling who's legit. I appreciate that. There's a lot of them out there. Shout out our boy Kaboom, dude. Going to the Pat McAfee show. You listen to this, Kaboom? I want to be on the Pat McAfee show. Just give me an appearance. I just want to know who Tomlin does give the majority of the first team reps to this week. Is it Justin? You have to, right? I mean, if I had to guess, it's a more of an even split. I don't believe Justin gets a majority of them. This is just a guess. I don't believe Justin gets a majority of them, but I do believe that it's even. But it wouldn't surprise me at the same time if we got off this live stream and 20 minutes from now, Jerry Dulack's tweeting out, Russell Wilson is still the starting quarterback and the Steelers are already convinced that he's their starting quarterback and nothing will change. But if I was optimistic, I would say it wouldn't be a majority. It would be an even rep. Who do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers will try to get after the Brandon Ayuk thing finally ends? I don't know. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm calling Dallas. Like, why would you not call Dallas? If you put all this effort into Brandon Ayuk and what's holding you back is San Francisco, why not call Dallas? CeeDee Lamb's making half of a deal out of this that Brandon Ayuk is. So if you're worried about drama, Brandon Ayuk has brought much more drama to the table than CeeDee Lamb. And at the same time, CeeDee's coming off a 1,700-yard season with 12 touchdowns. That dude's ridiculous. Like, he's never had under 1,000 yards in a season. He is very good. I don't think he fits the offense as well as Brandon Ayuk, but to be honest, I think he's worth it. So he would be my next call. Outside of that, I'd start going younger. Jahan Dotson, John Mechie, Treylon Burks. I don't think any of them are stars. I think all of them need development, and maybe they all stink in a year from now. But I think they're worth a shot. Dude, you speculate all the time. It's actually what this channel has become. I don't know what I'm speculating on, but I appreciate you. Why do we think Russ would be better here with less weapons than he had in Denver and worse offensive line and a year older? I thought that the offensive line was going to be better. I'm surprised at how bad the offensive line is. I think anybody would be surprised with how bad this offensive line is. Like, you had Dan Moore, who was the weak link, but the rest of them looked promising. I mean, Zach Frazier's a monster. Nate Herbig's a very reliable offensive lineman and young. Like, it's not like Nate Herbig is a dude who is old and washed up and I think Nate Herbig can develop. This would have been an opportunity for him. James Daniels is a dude who should be on the up and up. He looked very good last season. Broderick Jones, you expect to be the franchise tackle of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Troy Fontano's working his way in there. They should not be this bad. You thought that the offensive line was going to be much better. They aren't. The worst weapons, Yeah, that's certain. That's 100%, definitely. But again, I I'm waiting for something to happen because I don't think the Steelers are going to settle with what they have. Should we be worried about the Steelers for the first time in forever? No. And I'll explain very simply why you should not be. The preseason means literally nothing. It shows you a lot and it allows you to have some indications of certain things, but overall, it means nothing. You know, a year ago, we sat in this same spot and talked about how Kenny Pickett is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers and they have an absolute stud. This dude looks unbelievable. And Matt Canada's offense, man, dude, it might be something. Where are we now? I just, the way I look at it is the preseason indicates a lot of things about certain players, but it doesn't give you what this team is. And until we see week one, and I'd be less optimistic about a win in Atlanta where we sit here right now, but until we get to week one, I'm keeping things very subtle with my expectations for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is Jerry Dulac a good reporter? Best in the business, my friend. Best in the business. We'll be lucky to have 4 wins this season. Again, I think I understand where everybody's coming from, but it's 2 preseason games. And if that's what you're judging the Pittsburgh Steelers off of, then you're worrying a little bit too much. Because if that means if this is an indication of 4 wins this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers should have been Super Bowl champions last year. And they weren't. So here we are. All right, gonna keep it going. Appreciate this one. I'll look for it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Is this for the Oh, it's for yep. Yep, I got you. I got you. Um Peyton Wilson was wearing the green dot last night. I mean, Patrick Queen started with the green dot. I don't know if Peyton Wilson took it over in the second half, maybe. I mean, obviously somebody has to continue to wear the green dot. So maybe it was Peyton Wilson after Patrick Queen came off the field. Patrick Queen will wear the green dot during the regular season. All right. What's the update on Jaylen Warren? I was diving into this a little bit earlier. I don't know right now. We're a wait and see situation. Hopefully it's good news and it's nothing big. I don't expect him to play in third preseason game. I would be shocked if we see Jaylen Warren before week one, even on practice, just because hopefully this is nothing. I'm hoping it's nothing. Hamstring injuries are tough. All right, just making sure I didn't miss any as we How much of an impact do you think Darnell Washington will make on the offense this season? I hope more than he's made in the preseason because he looks very good at training camp and looks very good at practice. So I hope so. Again, I mean, it comes down to how long do quarterbacks have to throw the football because right now it's not very long and that's an issue. So hopefully that continues to grow and you get more protection and more time for Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and you could get Darnell Washington involved. We got to see this offense flow, which I expect to happen, but right now it hasn't. Do I think that the Dallas Cowboys are waiting for the Steelers to call, expecting that the Ayuk situation will fail? I think Jerry Jones is open for anything that brings headlines and attention to the Dallas Cowboys. And if he's sitting around thinking, man, I should wait for this one, maybe. But if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers and Brandon Ayuk doesn't work out, even if Brandon Ayuk, look at where we sit right now, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm calling the Dallas Cowboys and just saying, hey, what's going on, man? Like, can we get involved in this right now? And we'll just see what one plays out better in our favor. That's what I would do because I think they're both worth just about the same money. You're going to have to pay about $2 million more a year for CeeDee Lamb. But the way I look at this is I get it. Nobody wants to pay a wide receiver $30 million a year. I understand that. But 2 years ago, nobody wanted to pay a wide receiver $20 million a year. So 2 years from now, when the salary cap's $50 million more than it is right now, wide receivers are going to be making even more money. It's the same cycle of everything. Quarterbacks who make $55 million right now are going to be making 70 in 5 years. So by the time this contract ends, CeeDee Lamb will be a steal at 30 million. I mean, think about Deebo Samuel 2 years ago. People are freaking out. They're going to pay Deebo Samuel $25 million a year. Are you kidding me? That's nuts. That's a bargain right now. That's a bargain. You pay what the future is, and $30 million is not going to be much in a couple of years. Trade Ayuk to Dallas for Zach Martin in a second. So you're trading Brandon Ayuk to Dallas. You're getting Zach Martin's going to San Francisco, and the Steelers are sending a second. I don't know how that would work. I just go to Dallas. Do I think Brandon Ayuk watched last night's disaster? Yeah, but or maybe, I don't know, but I don't think that plays a role. Like, if you ask George Pickens this morning what he thinks of his quarterbacks, he's not going to sit down and say, yeah, they suck. He's going to be very optimistic about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, because these guys, they understand that those times are struggling, and George was frustrated last night. But they also they know these guys better than we do. Brandon Ayuk understands the quarterback situation here. And to be honest, I don't think Brandon Ayuk strikes me as a guy that is concerned about winning more than he's concerned about the money. So because of that, I would guess that he's totally okay with it. Did Jack Leto have any offensive snaps last night? He did. He had a couple, not as much as I'd like to see. I think he's fading as an option. I'd like to see Cole Pruitt kind of work his way in there at fullback, because I think he will make the roster. And I would like to see if he's a capable fullback, because I've heard that he is, but I haven't gotten to see it. I asked a couple of weeks ago if you prefer Fields or Russ if the O-line starts slow. You said Russ and the O-line wouldn't start slow. How do you feel now? I'm not surprised about the O-line at all. I'm shocked about the O-line. I mean, I don't understand why people would be so down on the O-line. Like, where anybody who thought James Daniels and Broderick Jones were going to be the biggest issues for the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line this summer, I mean, I want to know where you were going with that one, because I'm genuinely curious, because that's, I mean, you were spot on, but I think it's wild that that's where we are. Those were the two best offensive linemen last year. Isaac Seumalo was the third. Their Steelers' best offensive lineman right now is Dan Moore Jr. That's crazy to say. I don't think anybody saw that happening. But where I stand right now, I think Fields improvises more. It gives you more of a can make something out of nothing. So maybe you just try to make something out of nothing. But I still think the Steelers' offensive line is going to improve. I think you have to get guys healthy, and you have to give Zach Frazier more time. I think at this point, it's crazy to start Troy Fautanu at right tackle if you're already starting Zach Frazier at center and the offensive line is struggling. Like, it just in my head, like, you're going to add two rookies to an offensive line that's not that good right now. It makes me skeptical, to say the least. Y'all were out here defending the Arthur Smith hire. Everybody looked unprepared. I agree with you. Arthur Smith did not impress me last night. I still think Arthur Smith is a phenomenal offensive coordinator. And I think that if I mean, the narrative will change. Everybody will be on this live stream in a week if they come out here and destroy the Detroit Lions, and Justin and Russ look phenomenal, and the offensive line looks great, and Arthur Smith's offense is crazy. Yeah. And in week one, Arthur Smith's offense looked good. It was the rest of it. It was Broderick Jones and the offensive line that weren't getting anything done. There was fumbled snaps and sacks. But Arthur Smith's offense looked good in the first preseason game. Didn't look good yesterday. Any update on Cam Hayward extension? Not as we sit here today. I thought something would have already been done by now. Surprised that it hasn't been. I think they're waiting on a wide receiver trade. All right, let me get another one or two in here. I appreciate you, Rel. Why is everyone? Because that's what Twitter does, man. I try to avoid social media at all costs, because it's wild. It's a wild time. I mean, Justin did a lot of bad last night. He also did some good. I don't think he did more good than bad. I think he did more bad than good. But there were moments of, oh, okay, that looked like there was some potential here. And to be totally honest, his like craziest play, the pass to Des Fitzpatrick, in my eyes, should have been intercepted. That was a low pass. You should have threw it higher so that Des had to reach up to make that play, but he got through it. There were a lot of bad, a lot of good, but I don't know. I stay off Twitter with this stuff because you got guys who just love to bash on people. I mean, you could check this live stream for one of them. It's just how we are. What would Omar Khan give up for CeeDee Lamb? I would guess the same that he'd give up for Brandon Ayuk, a second-round pick and something. I don't think it'd be a player, but I think you could potentially make that happen. Do I think Minkah Fitzpatrick will get back to Minkah ball? Because if he does, him and TJ can win us games alone. Yeah, I mean, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think last year people just got a weird narrative about Minkah, but Minkah was like very hurt last season. So he probably wasn't 100%. He probably wasn't even 75% right up until the end of the year. I have a hard time believing that it was just like a downfall. I think it was an injury that held him back last season. You're a great optimist, but you have to admit Wilson is washed. Maybe he is. There's a possibility he is, and I'm willing to admit that. What I'm not willing to do is say that it's a definite, because it's not a definite. And until it's proven to be a definite, I will not say that it is. Just because, I mean, if that's the case, Justin looked almost as bad. So does that mean Justin stinks too? I don't know. All right. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody as we scroll through them. No, I thought the Steelers were getting Brandon Ayuk for a second and a fourth. I think it still could possibly happen. I mean, they haven't not gotten him for a second and a fourth. So we'll wait and see. As I said earlier in this live stream, my sources have been telling me the entire time that while they're hopeful, they're not as confident as many reports are claiming. So second and fourth is what I would guess they give up, but I don't know. Who's a surprise cut you think might take place? Nate Herbig might be one of them. I mean, especially with the injury. But that being said, I mean, you got to be really in love with Mason McCormick and Spencer Anderson, and I don't think that they are. So that could be tougher, simply because Nate's a reliable guard, and right now James Daniels stinks, man, stinks. Who, if anyone, won a roster spot last night? Oh, that's tough. That's real tough. I don't know if anybody did, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody won a roster spot last night. Scotty Miller helped himself, certainly, and Des Fitzpatrick did too, but I don't think anybody won a roster spot last night. Do I think Des Fitzpatrick will get a roster spot? I think he's on the outside looking in right now, but a good practice squad guy. He needs to do more on special teams. He had a really rough training camp, has looked much better in the preseason. I'd still think he's on the outside looking in. Super chat, please. I appreciate you. I apologize. When I got good old Nick here, it's because it makes things a lot better. Ryan Watts won a roster spot. I think Ryan Watts looks good and continues. I wouldn't say he won a roster spot last night. I mean, he missed a pretty wide open tackle on a punt that, I mean, it was close, but he missed the tackle. Then he missed another one later in the game. I think Ryan Watts has a lot of development in front of him, but a lot of potential. I think you keep him because of that. I don't think he won a roster spot. Oh, and then if you want to talk about who the superstar of the last night was, Cameron Johnston's an absolute freaking stud, man. Him and Nick Herbig, studs. They bring like the game MVP up to the podium after the game. Should have been Cameron Johnston right there next to Nick Herbig. Studs. Where are we at here? Do I think Dejon Edwards makes the team? No, I do not. Just because you already have 3. Depending on Jaylen Warren's injury, we'll find that out, but I don't think as we sit here right now. Why is 77 not at left tackle? What am I missing? I mean, right now, 77 looks terrible. Dan Moore is surprisingly the Steelers' best offensive lineman, so that's why he's not at the left tackle. I understand the narrative that's out there. I don't agree with it. I think that where you sit right now, you want Troy Fautanu to be your starting right tackle. You want Broderick Jones to be your starting left tackle. And the longer this waits, the bigger the issue. I understand that. I get it all. But I also think where we stand right now, Broderick Jones is injured. You need to get him healthy. You're not taking Dan Moore out until he is, in my opinion. And on top of that, Dan Moore can't play right tackle, and Troy Fautanu is injured. So you don't have a right tackle unless you're going to start Dylan Cook. And I bet you half the people in the fan base don't even know who that is. All right. With that said, I believe we'll finish it with this one. How are the fullbacks looking? And Luke Cage, I touched on this pretty much the entire show, so just go back and check on it. Yes, the quick answer is yes. How are the fullbacks looking? We'll end with this one. The fullbacks have looked much less exciting than they looked during training camp. I hope that turns around here in the last week, but if I had to guess, man, Jack Coletto is off the 53-man roster, and that's as disappointing as it comes. All right. With that said, guys, I'm going to head out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on this live stream. It's been a blast to recap the game. I know it wasn't the game that Pittsburgh Steelers fans were hoping for, but it's a preseason game. This is early. The struggles need to happen right now. That way you make adjustments. I don't know what those adjustments are right now. We'll dive into them more as practice begins and the Pittsburgh Steelers get to show us new signs of life and how changes are actually going to be made. I'll keep everybody updated as we move forward. I'll be back tomorrow with Nick. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to change these to afternoon podcasts for the time being, just to make sure that we get more of you guys in here and involved so that we can answer more of your questions. With that said, try to enjoy a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.